Hi, welcome back to another episode of some time-lapse drawing and painting with some commentary. Thanks for coming back if you have a returning person watching. If not, hello. So this painting leads on from the last painting, episode 2, and it's kind of, for me, it's an example of why you just have to start drawing or painting or making marks, whatever it is, if you're feeling uninspired or unmotivated, because until you have that sense, some action and some doing, the motivation won't be there. You've got to start doing something. And the last painting that I went through came just literally from not having any ideas and just making some shapes, and then one thing led to another. I ended up with a little kind of forest painting with some blue characters sort of sat praying, and then those, I wanted to explore those characters in a little bit more detail, so that led to this painting, which is just a more detailed exploration of those characters, and something I wouldn't have come up with if I hadn't have been inspired by just getting going, getting painting. This one I wanted it to look quite like an oil painting, to have that kind of soft focus across it, and I think that came out pretty well. I wanted it to have a little glow from an internal light, and I'm not sure that comes across really well, so that could be something to work on for the next one. But anyway, let's have a look at how it was made. I'll go to the starting phase. So as in the other videos, I start with a rough sketch and work it up, put some colour through it. This one I had to collapse down and send out as a PNG like last time to flatten the layers, because I'd got a bit lazy with too many layers. But yeah, so I'm starting with this rough drawing, and I've got the symmetry tool on here on Procreate on the iPad, because it's just making the drawing a lot easier and a lot quicker, and it's a straight on of the character, so it being completely symmetrical like that, it's fine, and it's what I was looking for anyway, and it's a nice tool to kind of cheat that out. What I've done there is set the drawing layer to multiply, and then underneath I'm painting, and I'm going for that tonal kind of painting at the moment, which is the process I'm trying to go through as much as possible to get familiar with it and make sure that if I am making changes, it's coming from a place of experience with the process. So I'm trying to be disciplined and sticking to it. So I'm just working through this one. I thought would just have quite a straightforward top-down lighting, and I'm just kind of carving out the shapes, imagining all of these body parts as simple shapes, because that makes the entire process a lot easier, rather than thinking of a leg or a head or anything like that. I'm thinking of a cylinder or a kind of carved into oblong, or just some round object. It's just easier to do it like that, little sausages for the fingers, rather than thinking of them as what they are. Just break them down into their simple shapes. And now I'm still going through, just trying to find the kind of to bring out those shapes with a bit of shading and tonal work, fiddling with the eyes a little bit there and getting the legs in. So I imagine he's quite a kind of fat little character, so he's got quite a deep shadow. On these kind of larger circumferences, you can see here what I'm doing is the very, very underside is shaded, and then there's a little bit of bounce light kind of bouncing up, and then across the I think it's called the terminator, where the light is just meeting the shadow, it's actually quite dark there normally, and those little details, they just give a real sense of reality to your paintings. So a little bit of study and technical knowledge in those areas would help. and we might go into that in more detail at some point on one of these videos. So yeah, so again, you can see me here carving into the face, breaking it down, trying again, putting it back. So I'm just exploring. I think I started off wanting it to be quite harsh shapes, but then I don't know. I kind of felt like smoothing it out would be fit. It would be more in keeping with the rest of the body and the character. So I'm just trying to find those shapes, moving things back and forth. It's much easier to do this kind of exploration in black and white than it would be in color, for me anyway, and it might be for you. It just takes a lot of the complexity off, because in color there could be numerous different hues of one color or multiple different colors. So now that I've got my tonal values where I wanted, I've again set set it to multiply, and then underneath I'm painting color, so that all of my tonal values are retained, and I just bring the colors. It's a little bit dark to start off with, but again, it's kind of like a little dark woodland creature character, so maybe I pushed it a bit too dark in the end, but at the time that's kind of what I wanted. So you can see I'm flicking back to the original image that inspired it, just so I can make sure that I'm kind of sticking somewhat true to how the feeling of that original painting. And at this point, like I said at the beginning, and I said in the last video, I'd got a little bit, I was ill-disciplined in my layers, so normally I don't work on that many. I try not to work on too many layers, but I'd used quite a few overlay layers and multiply layers, and I hadn't been flattening them down. And so sometimes what happens then, when you want to flatten them down, if you've got too many, because they affect the layer below, they when you flatten them, you can have unintended consequences, and the effects that you have got and are happy with can disappear, and that's what was happening here. So what I did was export it as a PNG. I'll go back into my gallery here, go to this one, and then I was able to use that as my kind of flattened layer and start painting on top of it. So let's have a look at this. This is where we picked up from here. So now I'm just kind of trying to bring some other colours in. I'm thinking what will work well with this kind of blue glow that he's got, and I'm trying to sort of lighten that a little bit, because I do think it's a little bit dark, and I'm stumbling across this kind of some pinky purpley sort of effect. Would be nice, and I was trying to work out where to put it, whether it's across the head or across the back, and I started to kind of feel like the shoulders were a really good place for that. At this point I'm just working in really small details. I'm just trying to just lighten the character, so I'm using an overlay layer there and just bringing up the whole body, so that it's a lot brighter, and feels a lot more kind of ethereal that way, because although the environment is quite dark, I wanted the character to be kind of glowing like it is in the original painting. I'm not sure I maintained it, got a little bit dark again towards the end, but you know, that was the idea. And like I said at the beginning, I'm trying to get this kind of, in this one I really wanted an oil painting kind of effect, so I'm just softening everything, softening the edges there on the top of his head. You can see I'm kind of stretching them out, and then I'm trying to go back and adding some glow to them, so it's almost like kind of fire, like a mystical fiery type effect off the back of his head, and you can see around the eyes now I'm just sort of trying to shape in where there might be different planes of his face, just to give it that feeling that it's got some structure in there. I played around with the eyes a little bit to see, do I want any much reflected light in there or not, and in the end I decided, you know, no, I kind of quite like them just dark. So yeah, I've touched up on the knees and brought some glow into that area, and now I'm working again just right on top of the head, and trying to find a nice color mix and bringing it around. So now I'm starting to get some really nice kind of glows, and I thought I'd bring some of that into the belly. So you can see I'm drawing some patterns down on his belly, Let me zoom in a little bit. And just trying to figure out how can I make him more interesting without changing his kind of structure or making any of his limbs or anything like that more oddly shaped. Because I quite liked the kind of, he had a nice feel to him, he had a nice weight, but I felt like there was some nice opportunity to make the design a little bit more interesting. So I'm trying to figure out these patterns that might be kind of glowing through his skin. And again, I use the symmetry tool like I did at the beginning to help with that. I'm trying to drop little bits of light into it to make it more interesting. So I lived with it for a little bit, and I carried on painting some other areas of the creature. So you can see on the top, I'll go back a little bit, you can see up on the top here, let me forward it to the right place. There I started to kind of add some, as though there's some particles kind of coming off of its head, just to give it a sense of it engaging with the atmosphere around it. Oh, I need to recenter it. There you go. And so I left the pattern on its stomach and just thought, well, we'll see how I feel about it as I carry on. Sometimes that's a good thing if you have an area of the painting that you're struggling with, which I was on the belly, then just leave it and move on to something else and come back to it later. So I'm dealing with those little particles, trying to add some little kind of shapes onto his stomach, but I got rid of those in the end. And then I came back to that kind of pinky glow. And I have a kind of a habit sometimes of overdoing the lighting and pushing things a bit too far. So I tried to make it a little bit subtler in this painting, which I think actually was working really well at this point. I was really happy with how it was looking. But that belly was just bothering me. So I got rid of the design that I put on there and just painted over it. So I flattened everything already, but it was absolutely fine, because it's a good practice to get into where you just are happy to repaint stuff that you'd already painted. It's good practice. So I started putting, still coming back to it, and then I stumbled upon this little idea of kind of almost like gills on his belly, and so I used the symmetry tool again, but they worked out a lot nicer. They were just a little bit more understated, which worked out really well because the character is quite understated. And yeah, so I'm just putting some rim light now around his hands, that kind of glowing green, and I've put some detail on the floor, some little grass, suggestions of grass, just to give him a little bit of environment without having to go too crazy onto it. And now on the head, I'm just seeing how far I can push that glow before it gets a bit too much. But yeah, I by this point I was really, really happy with the little character. It kind of came out really well, and the fact that it came from a painting, the previous painting, where I had no idea what I was going to do. It's just quite satisfying to have a character that at the end came from just starting without necessarily knowing what I was going to be doing. So we can zoom in a little bit, but yeah, so here it is. Great. Well, I hope that was useful or interesting. It'd be good if anybody did have any comments or feedback or anything like that. Just let me know. I'm new to this, so sometimes I think I'm kind of waffling on at different points, but hopefully you get to see an entire process of a painting from beginning to end, with the steps that you can use if you want to bring them into your practice. It's not like do 1, 2, 3, one step after the next. Maybe you just would like to do something in a different order than me, or use one part of it in your process, but hopefully something in there is useful. Well, that's it for now, and I will see you next week.